Hello, welcome. Thank you everybody for joining us today. My name is Ian Harris, joined by FIDE Master Rick Bauer, and we are doing commentary on today's match between the Chess Club of Fairfield County and the New Britain Chess Club, two chess clubs located here in Connecticut. And the games are underway, but before we get into the games, I just wanted to quickly talk about the format of the match. Today's match is 8 players each side, and with 2 players in each rating category of master. So there are 2 masters for each team, 2 experts, 2 Class A players, and 2 Class B players are representing each side. So we have a lot of chess, a lot of exciting chess. The games have begun, and we're going to get to them very soon. Very quickly, here are the round 1 pairings. As you can see, New Britain was challenged by the Chess Club of Fairfield County, so they have white in the first round on all the boards. They are led by FIDE Master Nelson Castaneda versus National Master Arslan Achiev on board 1, and on board 2, National Master Ted McHugh versus National Master Daniel Lowinger. Board 3, these are our experts, Suhas Kadali for New Britain versus Ethan Gu of the CCFC. Board 4, Derek Meredith versus Ryan Young. Board 5, Mario Guevara Rodriguez versus Gabriel Andriescu. 6, Nakul Ramaswamy versus Jack Klein. Board 7, these are the Class B players here. Dennis Himes versus Rohan Krishna. And 8, Bob Rooster versus Gabe Borges. So quite an exciting lineup that we have here, Rick. A lot of interesting games ahead of us, I think.
Yes, definitely. Good matchups. It's a good format for making very close, relatively close pairings, although there is a rating advantage for Fairfield, about 50 points per board. So we do have a slight favorite and a slight underdog.
Yes, so
yes,
indeed.
We will see how things go. And the games are all very much underway. A lot of very interesting positions.
Yes, and one thing I would mention is you shouldn't necessarily pay attention to the ratings on chess.com. Some people haven't been playing very often on there, or just created accounts just for this match. So if you're interested to follow along with the ratings of the players, and who's playing who, you can see on our website on the broadcast below that are all of the matchups for the round 1 and also round 2. They're playing game 25 with a 5-second increment, and there'll be 1 round of that, and then a second round where the players will switch colors and play each other again. So it will be a total of 16 points, and the winner, of course, will be whoever can score more than half.
And so I guess we can start going through the and I think it's worth mentioning that New Britain and Fairfield have kind of established themselves as the 2 premier chess clubs in the state. So this is it's nice to be getting together for matches, especially at a particular time when it's hard to get together at the chess club.
Yes.
So
why don't we start with the game between Arslan Achiev and Nelson Castaneda on board 1, and I'll just quickly go back through the beginning moves. It was a Sicilian defense, as you predicted, Rick. There were going to be a lot of Sicilian defenses, and the players played very quickly, I would say, to get to the position where they are now.
Right. Well, Nelson has been playing quicker than Arslan so far.
Yeah, interesting, because Arslan's a pretty quick player, and
right.
And so that might mean that he's a little bit out of theory here. Yeah, he's down to 16 minutes already. That's That's a lot.
And Nelson has been the dominant player in the New Britain club for the last decade or so.
What about yourself?
Well, every now and then I can pull an upset, but it's fewer and far between at this point. But
Wow, I am in esteemed company to have you here with me today, doing the commentary. I looked it up. I checked before the match got going. How many times were you Connecticut State champion? I counted 8, but I could have missed one.
yeah, I don't know. It's somewhere between 6 and 8 in various ties, and some thing. Sometimes you include clothes, but unfortunately, most of my accomplishments are in the 80s and 90s. So you can kind of judge by that. Although I do, one of our competitors here, Derek, has created what he calls the Planet Earth Championship, which
Oh
is
yes.
the best thing you can ever win to brag about.
How many times have you won that one?
I won that a couple times.
Okay.
Uh, so uh,
Yeah, that's a fun
and
tournament.
so
That's you typically hold it outdoors, correct?
No, that's the Summer
Oh,
Open.
Summer Open. Okay, yeah, sorry,
Our
you're right.
Summer Open is held outdoors. The Planet Earth has moved around. And sometimes it's in a restaurant, sometimes it's someplace else.
Gotcha.
But anyway, this game is very intriguing. White has sacrificed a pawn. It has a pretty good grip on the position. Black hasn't castled yet. Um, And the question is, of course, whether White is going to get anything, be able to get any kind of initiative before Black consolidates that extra pawn.
I was gonna say it seems like time is of the essence here. If Black gets a couple more moves in and can castle, finish developing the
Right.
bishops, then probably he'll be just fine. The question is, can White get a knight to d6 or some other kind of attack
Well, now an
before
interesting
the
move might be knight takes e5.
knight takes
Um,
e5, queen takes e5, and the idea is bishop f4,
oh, but it doesn't work because of queen takes b2.
queen takes b2. Oh, that's a interesting
Yeah, good
tactic.
calculation there on Black's part. Do
Yeah.
you want to quickly go towards the other
Yeah,
games?
let's take a look at Dan Lowinger, or leg breaker, which is Ted McHugh versus Daniel Lowinger. Um, let me just flip this over. Yeah. And how did
This
this start? This started
started
off.
out as a four knights, a classical four knights, and then there was a Rubinstein where Black plays an early knight d4.
Yeah, this is
And
very interesting. And the players are playing slowly. I'm not sure who is. Okay, so
Daniel Lowinger is playing much slower.
yes, much slower.
I do know that Ted was expecting this. I had some communication with him, so he again is in kind of probably a bit fresher waters, maybe. But it's a
Yeah.
very complicated line
Yes, indeed.
where Black gets the pawn back, maybe dislodges White's king, and but it's
So
oh,
here,
now it looks like castles might be appropriate.
castles. Yeah, because I mean there is a obvious discovered threat. Knight c3 is a huge threat, but White will surely castle or play queen e2 perhaps. Black's problem is the queen on e7 is blocking
Yeah,
his
I would
bishop on
just
f8.
castle with White, and if there's no check, and I don't see any.
Yeah,
So,
it's an interesting position. I'm not surprised that Dan has taken a
yeah,
lot of time here because it's an unusual line for sure.
usually in this variation, White's king does get chased around a little bit more, like maybe with a check on g4 or something. But here it seems like he can just get his king to safety. The materials, even everything looks pretty dandy for White, I would say.
By the
Uh,
way, thank you for everybody that's joining us in the chat, spectating today. If you have any questions you'd like us to answer, feel free to ask away. If you have a particular game that you spot or interesting moment that you want us to take a look at, we'll be happy to do that for you. There are a lot of games, so we're going to do our best to cover as much of them as possible and try to give everybody attention here. This game, between Ted and Dan is it's a little dangerous looking for black here. He's got to be careful about rook e1 at some point, and all sorts of pins down the e file. Yeah.
So you want to move to the third board?
Yeah, let's go to Suhas versus Ethan. And another Sicilian defense. And it looks like a Maroczy bind formation for white. And
with the doubled C pawns, but black's king again. Black's king seems to be a little bit trapped in the center.
A little bit trapped, yeah. And so the question is going to be: Can black get castled? It might be the theme of the match. Can black castle? So far, the 3 games that we looked at, black is just can't castle.
Right. And of course, the e pawn is hanging, so there's some material incentive on.
Yeah. So basically, what happened here is black is sacrificing his ability to castle in exchange for some weaknesses of white's potentially in the center. Yeah.
Right.
It has the weakened pawn structure. So it's going to be an interesting battle.
As the 2 bishops, and just in general, I would feel more comfortable being white in this particular position.
White's not going to feel the pressure so much until perhaps later
until
in the
end game.
Yeah, exactly. If this game goes to an end game, then the pawns are going to be a big issue.
Right, but it's a long way from end game right now. So.
Okay, so we go on to the next game and see Derek and Ryan, see how this game is going. And Ryan had a bit of preparation he filled me in on, so I'm curious to see. He said he was going to play a French defense, and it was a French defense.
Yeah.
And he said he had some early G5 variations in store, but it looks like
White has managed to sacrifice both of his rooks.
Whoa, both rooks? Hold on, I haven't gotten there yet. That's very interesting. Yeah, it's not often that you see a double rook sacrifice.
Again, the black king is a little bit loose, and but here there's a significant, it's not just a pawn or something like that
wow,
that white has thrown in, and now he's throwing the. The queen is not attacked because there's a pin on the knight on d7.
So once again, don't pay attention to the ratings here. These players just don't play long time control chess.
Oh, and look at the time. The time in this is extraordinary.
Wow. Could this have been total preparation by white?
Yeah. Eric has this habit of preparing obscure lines very, very deeply, and he's gathered quite a few GM scalps with that method of his, because he'll find lines that are discredited from by theory.
Oh, that is scary. I thought perhaps on the last move, Ryan should have maybe given some material back with queen takes the bishop on g5, just to relieve some of the pressure, although then the knight comes in and is a dangerous attacker. So maybe
queen you would have suggested there.
That's what I was thinking at first, because this attack looks very scary. I mean, queen e7 is a huge threat, and I'm not sure how you even prevent it. Maybe your king has to start running.
In which case, the queen on g2 drops anyway.
Looks like HWR9 in the chat says Derek plays this line regularly against the French. So this might have been. And it's interesting because Ryan said he prepared this line against the French, or he prepared this French for him specifically. So I'm surprised that he got into such bad time pressure. I'm wondering where he got surprised. It might have been the bishop to g5 move early.
I think everybody at the New Britain Club has lost at least one, and that includes Nelson, at least one disastrous opening to Derek's very, very deep and tricky preparation that he.
This game is fascinating. Black has to find a move to stop this checkmate, and I think you just have to start running with your king. I don't see
king f7 is the only move,
and then queen to e7 check. King goes to g6. You have to go out, otherwise I'm sure you're getting mated somehow.
Well, you could get g8 and then take on e6 with check, and then f8 and then back to e7. White has a draw if he wants. But because the queen is covering the mate on g7 at this point.
But if the
So if
king,
you
if
do run to G6, then
yeah,
you're hanging the queen on G2, among other issues. Um,
yes, because of queen G7, take the queen.
yeah, well, King F, and if the king goes to F5, you even have knight H4 check to hold on to the bishop on F6. So it's
Oof, this looks
uh,
not good for black.
well, let's try to find something that is good for black. Let's move
Wow.
on to the next
Okay, yeah, let's
next
find
game.
something good for black to look at. Yeah, I agree. Okay, so here we have the game between Mario and Gabriel Andreescu. Um, Another Sicilian defense. And this one seems much more. Okay, black finally has castled. We found a game where black has castled. We have to go to board 5 to find one. Um, but this one feels much more balanced. Nothing exciting happening yet, I don't think. Nothing of too much particular interest. Um, yeah, and here the time is much more balanced, although New Britain's up by 4 minutes on the clock, so that's something.
They seem to be getting a time advantage on each of the games.
Ooh, the
This
next,
is
yeah, I actually think we should go to the next one because there's a huge time advantage on board 6 for New Britain. So I'm
uh,
wondering what's going on there.
yeah.
If you go to Nakul
I
versus
think we're
Jack,
using New Britain clocks in this tournament, aren't we?
I don't know. Did you guys get a time handicap or something? That's what it feels like. It's 20 minutes to 6 minutes in this position, and I have no idea what's going on. Let me just look at this for a second. So white's up in exchange, it looks like. Um, well, black does have
Black
the
has
bishop pair, but
two bishops, and pawns are even.
yeah,
And
so maybe bishop to b5 here, or bishop to e6. Attack that knight on c4 and try to get a pawn.
B5 is a little more forceful, I would
Yeah,
think.
b5 pins the knight,
Pinning
so
it.
I think that would be the better option if you're going to move that bishop. I don't see what else you would do for black in this position. Do you have to
Right.
be worried about rook d3? Rook d3 would be trapping black's queen, so you might have to play bishop to b5 here, and then
Well,
what? You
yeah,
can't. Ah, jeez. Right,
yeah,
bishop to
that's right.
b5, rook d3.
Wow.
Then if you take the knight, they take your queen. You take their queen, but they take your rook on c8 at the end. Oh, jeez, with check.
Oh my goodness.
So okay, white has a very serious threat of rook d3 trapping the queen, and black needs to find a way to extricate that now. And unless okay, so bishop to c6, but what is he gonna do after rook d3? I don't see what bishop to c6 does. Did he miss the threat?
That could be. That could be all she wrote for this game.
Yeah, I think he missed that threat, and this might be
Like
first game
our,
done.
our first one done, yeah. That was our substitute player. It was a late scratch for Gert Hillhorst was going to be playing in Indian territory. Came in Nakul Ramaswamy came in to replace him.
Yeah, he filled in at the last minute.
Yeah, last
Uh,
minute
and
replacement.
this is a very good start for him if he wins this game.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah,
Always nice in a team match to get one of the early points on the board. I always
yeah,
feel good about my team's chances when we score first.
for sure. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Because then it starts to
so
put pressure on the other boards to try to start winning. And
right,
yeah, white is doing these. Oh, yeah, white's doing these exchanges. I was going to say just to simplify the position. Black's down a rook for a queen. So yeah, this is going to go down as a win for New Britain. And let's go to the next board. We have Dennis Himes versus Rohan Krishna. Um, let's see. This one is okay. This is the first game where I can confidently say that. Well, actually, I can't even that confidently say that we're better here. Black's up in exchange, but white has two pawns for it, and the bishop on e5 looks very powerful.
although wait a minute. Oh, the bishop has to go to g3 to stop the mate.
Well, that's guarded by the queen actually. There's a
Oh, the
there's
queen.
an
That's
unusual
the
queen on
queen on
f1.
f1.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, unusual queen on f1 there.
Yeah. So the bishop can go to d4 if it chooses and block that rook
Yeah, and
out.
it kind of guards everything. And the problem for black is
Yeah,
that white doesn't really have any weaknesses in this position for you to target.
that's
Uh,
fair. But this is roughly an even game, I would guess.
Roughly even. Yeah, it's going to be hard for white to use the queen as long as it has to stay guarding g2.
Right. Well, eventually you could play f3 and kind of unwind that way after bishop d4.
Indeed.
Um, but anyway, but yeah, that one seems to be the most balanced of the ones we've seen
And
so
we
far.
actually, CCFC has a time advantage on this board, so that's a plus.
Oh
Two
yeah,
minute, not
that's
much, but a
a very
small one. And also on the next
great,
board we do as well. Bob Wooster
great,
versus Gabe Borges.
great.
This game looks exciting. Also, both kings are in just totally exposed areas. Black's king is on b6, and somehow is he safe? I don't know. But the queens have been traded, so that should help.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
The bishop is holding. Yeah, I think after looks like white can play king d2 here. Try to create a try to get that knight to a4.
so we have a result. Nakul has defeated um, Jack Klein on board 6. So New Britain
Okay,
goes up 1 point. So you guys are first ones on the board. And let me just
very
update
good.
this. Let me just update the scores here.
I'll go back to board one.
Yeah, let's go back through again.
Uh,
Well, this one doesn't seem
seems
like it's progressed very far, except Black did manage to castle and develop their bishops.
black castled and white won back his lost pawn.
Right.
So this has become somewhat more balanced. It was very dynamic before, and now it's become a little bit a lot more of a balanced position.
Yeah.
White White's time advantage will start to may start to impact the game if if nothing much else happens here.
Yeah. On the other hand,
And
I was gonna say Black needed to use a lot of time earlier to get through the complications that there were, and I have a feeling that
right,
the time in this game is going to start to level out a little bit now that it's a little bit easier to maneuver through the complications.
that could be. One thing Nelson is very good at is reorganizing his pieces in a middle game environment. Actually, both sides have organized their pieces in a really kind of aesthetically pleasing way here. So it's not. You always have to be looking to improve. So sometimes it's even more of a challenge when you've got all your pieces on their ideal squares to find a move than if you have some kind of a glaring issue.
Yes.
So so this will be an interesting game. White's might be looking to play bishop f4 and then just pound in on d6. Um,
Right. Yeah, that
that's
would
the
be certainly a
opportunity.
nice outpost for any piece. But it's a
Right.
little bit hard to do at the moment because that bishop is needed to guard the c5 pawn. So
Well, not if you're hitting the queen.
yeah, if you gain that important tempo on the queen, then you could perhaps consider it right now, though it is Black's turn. So it depends on what Arslan is going to do here in this position.
Right. So
Um,
so say he plays rook d8 and white plays bishop f4. Um,
yeah, actually, I think maybe we should go to the game on board 4 between Derek and Ryan because that was the
yes,
game where it looked like
well,
Ryan was getting mated, but he's still alive. He's 1 minute on the
still
clock
alive
versus
and now
20 or 19 minutes, but he's still
yeah,
alive.
this was that position where white can take a draw by repetition.
Yeah, looks like that's what happened. King f7, queen e7 check, king went to g8, and now queen e6, king f8, queen e7, and white is thinking here, seeing if he has
Yeah,
more than a perpetual.
he has to see now what happens if he plays just a move like a knight to d5, threatening mate on f7.
A knight to e5, a knight to g5. Okay, here we go. So yeah,
That's
he's
what he
he's
just
deciding he
did.
doesn't want the draw. He sees a mate. Um,
he sees a mate threat anyway, so you might
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, hopefully there's not a mate, but this looks very hard to stop because black has zero development. None of the pieces on the queen side are
Oh, he
developed.
just took
Yeah,
your approach. Just give up
yeah, you have to
that
give
queen
something
on
back here.
d5. Yeah,
So black is losing their queen. He does have two rooks for the
he
queen,
does have two
but
rooks,
they're not in the game, and that's a
and the question
big problem.
is he going to lose anything else on the queen side or the king side? 'Cause
Right. So
there
now, if
will
Derek
be
can just win
another
a
mating
bishop,
threat very shortly.
yeah, there's going to be more mate threats, and in the meantime, if white can even pick up a bishop or a knight, then that's enough for white to win the
Yeah,
game.
right now the two threats are queen d8 check, picking off the bishop on c8, and bishop h6,
Yes.
which he just addressed by pushing the pawn to h6.
Yeah,
So
but still, queen e8 looks very good.
yeah, queen e8 takes on c8 and then takes on d7.
Yeah,
It's
this is the
obviously going to be a
problem when you
problem.
don't have any pieces developed. All right.
Um,
Okay, so that game is likely going to be a win for white. Let's go back, I guess, to board two. That one was that interesting opening. Um, and once again, we have Black's king has just gone for a run. He's on c7 right now, but it looks like this king is much safer than in the last game, even though he hasn't
right.
castled.
Yeah, he has found a little bit of a reasonable king position over there. Although, yeah, white can start throwing the a pawn and bring the bishop to e3. Um, yeah, still a little better for white, but black has consolidated a little bit. Um,
Yeah, and I'm sure Daniel Lowinger, for when you're watching this, he's going to be very happy with the bishop pair.
and the time has equalized
Time is
in this.
equalized, so actually he's gone ahead on the clock. I believe he started with a huge time
Yeah, I
deficiency
think they were
deficit.
over.
Yeah. Uh, Welcome to everybody in the chat. Thank you for joining us. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. We'll do our best to answer. If you have a particular game that you notice that something's interesting is happening, just alert us. We are trying to keep an eye on all of them as much as possible. Um,
Yeah. Board two is interesting. Black has
which game?
grabbed Gambit pawn, the Suhas versus
Yes.
board three. I'm sorry. Yeah, board three. I'm just taking a peek at. White is down a pawn now, but he um, is exerting some pressure on the F file.
Yes.
So
Yeah, the big question here is can white turn their pawn sacrifice? I didn't see if it was actual sacrifice or not, but can they turn something? Can they get an attack going basically on black's king? That's what white has to
yeah,
do.
Black
That's
was
why he's
able to
being
castle,
aggressive.
but again looked somewhat difficult at one point. But
Yes. Oh, yeah. There was
now
that
it's going
bishop
to be
aiming through.
comfortable over there because now F6 is threatened, and the black squares will be a big problem
Yeah,
for
it looked like, of course, black had no weaknesses, but if you can play a move like f6, you can generate the weaknesses yourself. Um,
right.
and those dark squares would certainly be a big problem, especially if the pawn's on f6 and the queen comes to h6, and you could picture a mate on g7. All of black's pieces, meanwhile, are on the queen side, and it would take
Yeah,
a long time, or it would be very difficult to get them over there to defend. You don't have your dark squared bishop. So this is definitely the right plan for white. It's very
so
interesting.
still having some problems with black on this board. Black may be considering to play F6 himself to try to blockade the position, blockade the black squares a little
f6 is an
bit.
interesting move, yeah. And I guess the only other alternative might be to just take on f5, although that brings in the knight.
Yeah, that looks very risky.
Yeah.
And so, alrighty, let's head down to the other boards.
Yeah. Should we see? Let's see. Who haven't we looked at for a little while? Mario and Gabe.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Try to find them. Mario, where are you? There you are. Okay, so here we have a symmetrical pawn structure. That's a little different. Definitely a solid position of the group. And white has a space, a clear bit of a space advantage here.
Yes.
Um, and fortunately, the knight has d3 and c4, so it's not in danger of being trapped.
Right. If
Um,
f4 happens, the knight can escape to c4. Yeah, this game is still kind of where we left it almost, and position hasn't changed too much.
right.
Still very balanced.
Yeah, very balanced. White, black has control of the C file for now, and that's hard to challenge with the knight uh, threatening D3.
Yes. I keep seeing Ryan's clock at 25 seconds and ticking down, and I just feel like we have to go back there to see what's happening. Is he getting
Oh,
meleeed?
okay.
Is he losing material? What is going on? Okay, so white retreated the bishop back to e3. That wasn't the most aggressive move, I don't think, but okay. So black is starting to get some development, but I think white's going to take this knight and play bishop d4 with some renewed mate threats. Although now it looks, I don't see a mate, and I don't see immediately see a way that white's going to win material either.
What about Queen E8 check instead of taking? But no, there's no check on D4 to follow up with. Um,
Right. But yeah, that's interesting.
it looks like black may have. Well, it's down to 23 seconds.
Well,
He
yeah, I doubt. I mean, there must be a move here for white. Maybe queen
maybe
e6. Queen e6 is an interesting move.
yes, and then knight will be able to take on D5.
And at the very least, you could capture on c6 and then take with the queen and be attacking everything. Yeah, queen e6.
Yeah, it's reasonable.
Gaetano says, "Hi, Master Rick."
Yeah. Uh, okay.
Okay, king f8. Yeah, what is this? Is the thing here for Derek as white here in this position is he's going to be. Is he going to try to go quickly and
Well, now
keep the
you can
pressure
win
on
the
Ryan?
exchange right away with bishop takes H6, right?
Bishop takes h6. Yes.
With check.
The opening moves in Derek's game. Yeah, sure. We can replay the opening. It was if Derek wins this game, it's going to be very impressive. He had a double rook sacrifice in the opening. I'll just go through the moves quickly for you. It was a French defense. And where exactly did that sacrifice happen? Bishop to g5, queen b6, takes, and then queen d2. And there was this. I don't know how much of this was actually theory. I mean, it must have been prepared by Derek to be able to play this so
Yeah,
fast.
Derek prepares things that only he knows.
Yeah, so
Like
there's one rook, and then white sacrificed a second rook. I mean, this is, I've seen games, plenty of games where white sacrifices both rooks, especially in these kind of French defense positions. And but the big question is, do you get enough in return? You have to have a huge initiative, create some attack on the opponent's king before they get to safety, and it looks like he was successful.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because there's so many mate threats and black's pieces are so underdeveloped that now we just get back to the position. Yeah, so white did win the exchange, and so yeah, that's just a little bit of insurance. If he doesn't mate him, now it's fine because he can just probably win the endgame with the
Right.
extra material.
And he just takes on D5 now. He's got a pawn as well. And yeah, and queen and a pawn for a knight and a rook. That's got to be white winning.
Oh, yeah, it's got to
Um,
be. And endless checks that you have to, with no time, you can't figure out
yeah,
where's the
plus he
safest
has
place to
no
put your
time.
king. I don't know how you maneuver through this. So yeah, it was a very interesting opening. I'll probably try. I'm no promises, but I might go through and save the games after the match is over and try to have them available for people to play through later.
Oh, that
But
would be wonderful.
yeah. Okay. Let's see. Who should we go to?
How about
Um,
leg breaker? We haven't checked in on him for a while, and I
okay.
think things have changed a little bit.
Yeah, so
Um,
we saw the king on c7 and nice and safe. And then Daniel played the move c5 in this position. Yeah, there was a threat to take on a7. I'm a little bit surprised he didn't play b6. I'm surprised c5. I guess he wanted to also control the d4 square. And then f5. Wow, pawn sacrifice. What is going on here? Why can't black take it? What was the trick? Why can't
I
he
think
take it
White's
now?
just
Oh,
going
there's a
to
pawn.
try to maybe play. Well, oh, he's got Queen C5 check. That's why.
Ah, yeah. Oh, that was very nice. Yeah, bishop f4 had a threat of queen to c5 check because the pawn on d6 was pinned. Yeah, very nice. Yeah, so you can't grab the pawn on f5 yet. You want to, but b6 was necessary. And actually, the light squares around the king might look very dangerous, but maybe that bishop goes to b7 and it could become powerful in that diagonal to
Yeah,
the center.
Black has no problem on the white squares because he has the only white squared bishop. So
Yeah.
he's
White. I feel
he,
like White needs to find a role for the knight on f3. The knight on f3 is being controlled by these pawns, so you got to get that knight somewhere. I mean, you'd love it to be on d5, obviously, but getting it
right.
there is another story.
Yeah, that would be three moves. And now he could play rook on a to d1 at this point, and
There you go.
maybe threatening. Now he's threatening rook takes e7, but black responded very quickly to that threat.
Yeah,
And
something
but
like
of
rook
course, black
d2
would have
double.
rather, if he had an extra move, he would have rather protected that pawn with the other rook than being able to bring a rook to the e file.
That's a very
So
good point. Yeah, black might be, his d pawn might be safe, but how does he finish his development? The rook on a8 doesn't really have a home yet. He's going to have to spend some time to play bishop to b7, rook d7, maybe slide the other rook to d8 or e8.
but meanwhile, White's only big concern is the F pawn. Does he really? I guess he decided not to try to protect that with G4,
Very interesting.
and instead he's maneuvering the knight. Knight's threatening to come to C4 or E4 now.
Anonymous 9612 suggested knight e5 instead of knight
Right.
d2. Does that
Yeah. The
work?
only problem with that is it doesn't really strike at anything. If
Right. Black is not forced to
obviously
take.
if Black doesn't can't take, but I'm just not sure what White's threats would have been. I guess he still had the threat of going back to C4. This gives him the options of C4 or E4, so it may be a little bit surprisingly more aggressive move to
Yeah, I
go
think
backwards
that
rather
black
than
is
forward.
going to. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, the hardest moves in chess are these retreating, attacking moves, and usually your instinct is not to just move your pieces backwards, but in this case, it's maneuvering to a better square. I'm a little bit surprised by bishop f8. I thought maybe black needed to play bishop to b7 to take the knight on e4. Um, and now I'm a little bit nervous about black's position actually, because there's going to be a ton
Uh,
of pressure on the d6 pawn.
yeah, that kind of justified the knight d2 rather than the knight e5
Yeah.
to that was part of
Interesting.
the
Knight
point.
e5 threatened knight g4, trapping the queen.
Oh, did it? Oh,
Yeah, apparently.
well, except
Yeah,
the queen has f5. It says uh,
yeah.
just take that pawn away.
Interesting. Yeah, but definitely very interesting ideas. The queen, if the queen is safe on f6, then all might be well for black. But now it's going to get chased, and then who knows what's going to happen.
Right. And then, yeah. Although the bishop is still guarding the queen if it comes to if it takes that pawn. So there's no super discoveries, killer discoveries there. Yeah, this is winding. This is going to go to the time scramble, I would guess.
Yeah,
They
well,
do
black is under 4 minutes, so he's going to start to feel the pressure a little bit. I mean, sorry, white's under 4 minutes. He's going to start to feel the pressure a bit.
it. And the Indian Territory game is done. Let's see.
Should we check out Dennis and Rohan?
Yeah, that's a good one. That's where I was headed.
Okay, so we have Okay, the same exchange in balance, but white has collected a bunch of black's pawns, and oof. I have to like white in this position because white still has no weaknesses. The
Uh,
rooks cannot combine on anything.
so somehow I got the Captain Dunsel again to,
Ah,
and that's over. It's
yes.
Queen and Bishop that just rung up.
And so is the game here. We just watched the end of uh, Dennis and Rohan. Dennis takes in the victory with a skewer on the rook at the end. That's why black had
Well,
to resign immediately. So we have three results so far, all in favor of New Britain, and I'll just show quickly. Oh, let me update the score, and then we'll show quickly what happened in the end of the game between Derek and Ryan.
okay.
Okay, so New Britain is out
Yeah,
to
so
a
far
commanding lead.
I would say that Derek's game was the game of the round
Yeah, this might be the game of the
so far.
tournament of the match.
Yeah.
The way it was
Um,
played, the opening was spectacular for sure. Yeah, in this one,
right.
Black just was trying to hold on, but there was really no hope.
Yeah.
The king's so exposed to queen checks, there's just nothing you can do really. Okay, all right. Both players in the game between um, let's see, Mario and Gabe Andreescu are very low on the clock. So we should look at this
Okay.
game.
Smart.
And black has a good-looking knight on c2. It's controlling a lot of squares in white's territory. But I'm a little bit nervous about it getting trapped. Perhaps. Okay. Oh, okay. That was a good move. e5, so that the knight has the square d4 to retreat to in case it gets attacked, enough times. Um, Yeah, and in an endgame here, I might prefer black a little bit just because white's pawns are fixed on light squares, and that might favor our light square bishop. I'm grasping at straws a little bit on this one.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Black looks, he's doubled on the C file. He seems to have some pressure. He's got the better bishop. I definitely feel like Black has an advantage here, but, will it be enough? He's got the threat of knight to B3. Um, I'm not sure. Yeah, not sure about B5, what the
Yeah,
idea
anonymous
there is.
2140 says positionally lost with white for white with the bad bishop and the c file. That might
Right.
be true, but practically with both players under a minute, it's going to be very hard to. I mean, one little slip and the game can go either way, really.
Yeah, I'm not sure I really understand B5. I guess he wants to play A5 and then B4. There it goes.
There he goes.
And
Yeah, F7 to F5 would also be an interesting move, but I'm not sure that you really want to open the position and give white's pieces space to move around. I think you
of
just want
course,
to take your
white is
time here.
very low on time here. There's a heavy time
Yes.
advantage for black.
Well, knight takes to e2 in this position looks very good because then if white plays rook takes e7, rook takes, bishop takes back on e2, then you have rook c2 at the
And the
end.
rook penetrates
And
and
the rook
wins.
penetrates on the second rank, and that's a victory for black, almost guaranteed.
Yes.
So black should
I
start
would,
swapping material here. Yeah, white crumbled a little bit under the pressure, under the time pressure here.
yeah, I would say this one's going your way.
Okay, good
Um,
because we need it desperately right now. I see on
so,
board three we're down to just 5 seconds on the clock, so we gotta switch to this board between Suhas and Ethan. This is the closest match on paper. Both very strong experts, near master strength,
yeah,
near master rating.
yeah, we've been holding a countdown for Suhas to become a master for several years, but he's involved in so many things. He's a politician. He's vice president of our club now. So he sometimes he puts his chess playing on the back burner. I think,
Yeah.
but he's a
So
very
it looks
talented
like
player.
yeah, indeed, and yeah. So what's happening in this position? Black is ahead by 2 pawns. There's some pressure near his king, though, but I don't see a breakthrough for white. So I would
Yeah,
give the
White might
advantage to
have
black.
lost his Yeah, earlier on, it looked much more promising for white. Now black has the D file. Black still has the pawns. Yeah, it looks like everything's going black's way here.
You got a shout out from Amav in the chat saying great analysis.
Thank you. Back to board one has changed quite a bit. Now we're in a multi-piece
Wow.
position. White's up the exchange, and
Oh, this is
he's
definitely
eating
going
all
White's
of
way.
black's pawns now.
Yeah,
So
black had a few pawns for it, but the problem is this rook is just going to mow them all down, and once those pawns disappear, it's a huge advantage for white.
right, and I think again this might be a situation where his time counted as much as his pressure on the board.
Yes, I was hoping the time might level out in this game a little bit, but it looks like that did not happen.
No, and
Maybe
yes,
it did a little bit, but not enough.
right. And
Okay.
so back to leg breaker.
Yeah, let's see if I've had any progress in this game. Yeah, it
You know,
looks
white
like
has
some.
picked up an exchange for the two bishops. Now he can take on d6 and take on f7, both with check. Um, and I think white looks a lot better at that point.
Really? I don't. What happens after king c6?
Takes king c6, queen d5,
Oh, queen
and
d5. Yeah, queen d5.
putting the
That's a
rook on
very good
a8.
move. Yeah, or the bishop on d6. Yeah,
Right,
this is very
right.
strong.
Yeah, this is starting to look very
Okay, so after queen f7, you have to play bishop to d7 to block it. And
right.
what is? Okay, so we had one game end in a draw. What happened
Oh, we
here?
did.
Yeah, the game between Gabe and Mario ended in a draw, and that was the one that was looking so good for
Wow.
white
Yeah, that was the
or
one
for
you had
black.
that chalked up, and I did too.
Yeah, we thought this was for sure going to be a win for black. He had a chance to win material. I just have to go back and see. There was that one moment, and we left it. Did he not win the exchange? He played a different move. He played bishop to b5 in that critical moment on move 31.
Oh, I missed. Easy win there, huh?
Yeah, and they just ended up trading pieces down to an even rook and pawn endgame. Wow.
Well,
Okay.
nice save for Mario.
And we had a win for. Okay, we also had a win for CCFC, the game between Ethan and Suhas. Ethan won the game as black.
Okay, yeah.
So let me just update the score here quickly, and I'll put up a game that's still going. The Ted McHugh and Dan Lowinger game seemed very interesting. So let me put that up
Yeah, that's
while I update the score. But
ranking. It's moving along. We're down to a minute left on both clocks.
what I like black here in this position, though. I mean, white has a rook and pawn for two bishops, but the bishops are very active. I think I have to like black. With the queens off the board, that's
I thought
key.
there was an exchange ahead. You're right.
Yeah.
No, this is definitely turned toward black. I'd miscounted the material on that. So
Interesting tactics here. If white tries to get fancy with rook takes d6, black responds with rook takes f1, and then king takes on d6. Let me just get the
right.
score updated here before too many games finish and I lose track of what's going on. Let's see. So we had to win for Ethan. Okay.
Well, Black's created a little bit of play here on the with his he's lost all his pawns.
In the
Yeah, now this game looks like a draw. He's going to queen, and there's nothing left to it.
I'm sorry, which game are you looking at?
Board one. I don't know how Black salvaged that.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Looked like it was definitely going to white at some point.
Oh, that game seems to have disappeared from my observation. Let me see if I can pull it back up. Oh, they finished their game.
Starting the next round. We
Yeah,
got
some
some games
of the
just starting.
round two games are beginning. I didn't see the result in the Arslan and Nelson game. That was what was that
That
result?
was a draw.
Wow, he saved that game somehow.
He saved it somehow. I didn't see it, but he managed to actually make a threat out of one of those two kingside pawns. He got
Unbelievable.
the G pawn through to the queen on G1, and that cost White his rook at the end.
Wow.
And that was, and of course, that was his last pawn, so there was no playing out from there.
Yeah, Anonymous 2140 points out that the A pawn here is going to turn out is going to be very strong for black, and I agree. It's going to be very hard for white to control that pawn. You're going to have to, really put your rook in a very passive position here if you're going to stop that pawn.
Whereas, this is you're talking on board two.
Board two, yeah, they're still going.
Yeah, no, the two bishops for the rook. This is very desperate for white, and I don't think there's anything left to it. Um,
So we have some round two games starting, but I think we should stick with the round one games for now.
you want to just? I think we're down to one, aren't we?
We also have Gabe Borges versus Bob Wooster. Maybe we should check in on that one
Okay.
quickly because this
Yeah.
one looks hard for white. But I'm curious. We haven't looked at this one in a long time, and it looks like black is winning. Yes, and he just won the game. So that's another one for CCFC.
Wow, you come back strong toward the end of the round.
Yeah, that round started off very roughly. We're still behind, but the updated score is. Yeah, it might actually end up with an even round. That would be remarkable. Given our
Yeah.
start, we were down 3-0. Um, yeah.
Yeah, this. Yeah, I don't see. There's nothing there left there.
So we need a win from Dan Lowinger on board two and as black in order to and he has won
Yeah,
this
he's just
game.
one.
So
That turned out to an even round after all that.
wow, unbelievable.
Yeah, that was. Still have to go back and see how they saved how board one saved himself.
Yeah,
But
that
but then again, we don't know how. I didn't know how Mario saved himself in that game. So
yeah, a couple
yeah,
miraculous saves there. Some
yeah.
really serious time
Rapid
pressure.
game like that. Yeah.
Wow. Um,
Decisive move is right at the end. So I guess we're starting out the next round.
yeah, some of the next round games have started, and I'll quickly put up the pairings for the next round for those of you that joined us. It's actually the same pairings except colors reversed, so the players play the same players twice. Um, and in this round, you can see there the pairings are up. Some of the games have started. The ones that have just finished, those players are allowed a 5-minute break, so they may start in a few minutes.
And Nat Cool has a very exciting position Indian territory. He started out as a K row, so you thought it was going to be a nice sleepy game, and now Black has grabbed two pawns, but has no development. His queen's exposed, his king's exposed, so it's going to be a bit of a. This will be like some of them from the previous round, where you have a conflict between material on one side and king safety on the other.
Anonymous 4871 says, "Wow, CCFC outdoes Houdini." Yes. Yeah. Actually, I'm pretty happy with the results given how it looked like it was going, but I don't know. Now I feel like with CCFC taking over white in all the games for round two, that
Yeah, it
I mean,
makes them even more of a favorite than they started out.
yes, but
Um, Now we actually have a solid position starting on board five.
between Mario and Gabe,
Yeah,
let's
this
take a
is
look at that game.
a standardish opening.
London system looks like.
Yeah, London
Well, they had a
system,
very
but
solid first game, also, if you remember, and nothing too much happening. And it seems like both players, the
Right.
style is
Yes.
meshing to the point where nobody's taking unnecessary risks early in the game, unlike the last
Yeah,
game we just saw.
yeah, Mario has a tendency to play that way. He'll play very solid openings. He's kind of modern, except for in this line, it's very hard to get anything different than the double queen pawn out of the London system.
Yeah, in this
Um,
position, White should play, looking to play knight e5 and knight d2 and castle kingside maybe. Um, Although perhaps Black wants to play bishop to a6, and if you are nervous about that, then you might throw in at queen e2 right now,
right, that's true.
just to avoid that bishop trade possibility. But yeah, this will probably be a long game. So
Yeah.
let me just make sure I have all the games that have started. Let's see. It looks like the top board has not started their next game yet, so we have to wait for that one. Ted
Yeah, the
McEwen.
Dennis Himes is no surprise. He played a French defense, and we have a bad bishop on the board, which is his nickname around New Britain parts, as conferred by Derek, who has a particular hatred of the French defense that doesn't allow him. Currently, that's the one defense he doesn't have these wild double rook sacks or any kind of great sacrificial powers that kind of blunts his creativity, I think. So he disparages it every chance he gets, but he does
So
admit in some of his moments he will admit that it's out of respect rather than out of total contempt. So
so we'll
knight
have to. Oh,
a7.
sorry. Yeah, I just was opening some of the games and the game. I'm on the game with Ryan versus Derek. That was
Okay.
the double rook sacrifice in the first round, and we'll see if maybe Ryan's preparation in the second round pays off a little bit more. He's told me he was prepared the c3 Sicilian against Derek for this one, and he
Derek's a little
got
more
it.
dangerous with white than with black, but he does have a lot of his sacrifices early in the opening do tend to work a little better with white than with black.
Yeah, but so far nothing special here. I believe this is all theory, and but we'll have to keep an eye on it because that last game was very exciting, and I'm sure Ryan's going to be looking for some revenge after that double rook sacrifice. It was a beautiful game.
Yes. Um,
Let's see.
see,
Who else do we need to get up?
yeah, Indian territory is now white just sacrificed a piece going for mate.
Wow. Well, the queen is under attack on b2, and also the knight on e4.
Right. So the knight, he could either take the knight or take on b7,
Queen
and
takes
in which
b7 looks very interesting to me.
either queen or rook takes is interesting, but queen takes, yeah, is a little more.
Well,
Knight
actually,
f6 would
but then
defend
after
rook
knight f6, maybe there's rook to c8, and do you have a hard time
to
guarding
b8.
c6? Sorry, c1, rook c1 in that
Oh, rook
position.
c1, yes, yeah. Yeah, black may have gotten just a little bit too greedy in this opening.
A little carried away taking pawns. Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
danger. You can go taking pawns, but if you lose the initiative, if you can't castle and you don't finish your development, then that can often backfire on you.
Right. And normally black avoids that. Uh,
Just see if our top board has started. Yes, it has. And so we'll take a look at the opening between um, Arslan and Nelson. And that their first game ended in a draw. I don't know how. Nelson had a huge advantage in that position, it
yes.
seemed, although it was complicated. So that was a big save by Arslan in the first round. So we'll see if he can make something happen. And another Sicilian.
Yeah.
You were
This
right with
one's
your prediction of lots of
yes.
Sicilians. By the way, we have a lot of Connecticut current and, or actually not current, but former state champions participating in this match today. Rick and myself are of course champions, but playing in the match, Nelson and Arslan are recent champions, are playing each other right now, and also Ted McHugh.
Ed McHugh is Ed is a 10-time Blitz champion and 2-time standard state
Would
champion.
you say that Blitz is his specialty?
He is a fast man. Yes, he is quick, and he does like to play quickly. He doesn't play a lot of tournaments in a year. He's an unusual in that he is able to maintain some some uh, ability even with very normally if you don't play you get very rusty. He plays online enough. He plays enough blitz that he's able to keep his play at a very high level for the 1, 2, or 3 tournaments he plays in a year. Um, he plays regularly at the in the amateur team championship and irregularly in the state championship. I think he's um, so
By the way, it's so interesting. I was just reading the game chat between Dan Lowinger and Ted McHugh that apparently when they were doing all those simplifications in their game, that was the game where Dan ended up with the 2 bishops for the rook. He made the same mistake that we did, thinking that he was up in exchange when actually he was down a rook for 2 bishops.
right. That was my mistake.
He did the
Yes,
same thing. It's
yeah.
funny how the your eyes play tricks on you sometimes like that.
Right. It's usually it's easier to do that if you're toggling between games because you have to
Yeah.
recount them. Normally, you have kind of a running count when you're actually at the board, but it has happened every now and then. It does happen that, and Ted is very solid on his tactics, so that's an uncharacteristic
Um,
mistake for him to make.
so really quickly, I pulled up the game between uh, Ethan Gu and Suhas Kadali because they started recently, and it's a actually almost a perfect mirror image. All only one pawn move difference between the two of them, and so that's interesting. But I mean, in these types of positions, when one side is essentially, I mean, I'm not saying he's copying, but when in these sort of symmetrical positions, usually the advantage would go to the player whose turn it is, right? Who's moving first.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel good about this for white, but I mean it's still very early.
Oh yeah, totally symmetrical. Although black has played a6 and white has played c3, you would think c3 is a little more useful than a6 as well.
Yeah, that was my other
Um,
thought is that that pawn helps protect for an eventual advance in the center of the board. And also the bishop can retreat to c2, which can be a useful square if you ever open up that diagonal to the king.
right.
Um, well, okay, that one will be one to keep an eye on, but nothing, no
Yeah,
fireworks there yet. So let's see. Let me make sure I have all the games up. Looks like I do. Um, yeah. So
yeah. The
where would you like to go?
Indian territory game is coming to a crucial
Ah, okay. Let's take a
point.
look.
Um,
This was the one
black,
where White was trying to mate, and he got
yeah,
his
white,
piece back. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. The pieces are equal. Pawns. Black still has his 2 pawns. Um, his queen is controlling the d file at this point. The queen is holding everything together,
Yeah.
in Black's position, pretty much unaided by anyone.
But the problem
The
is you can't really get developed so easily. This bishop on f8 can't get out. If you play something like e6,
right,
then f7 becomes a problem.
yeah, you'd
So
have to go to e5 instead of e6,
yeah,
and that's going to create another thing for the queen to guard.
right, right.
So
But I don't
it's
exactly see how White makes significant progress here. It's gonna take a little
well, just
technical.
rook on f2 d1 is going to threaten mate.
Yeah, that looks like very strong.
And
Yeah, we had a suggestion of rook takes a7 in the chat, and then pushing the a pawn, but But this seems much more dangerous
I
for
like
black.
rook on f to b1 in this position. I don't offhand see a defense.
Oof. Yeah, that. Well, maybe rook to d8.
Rook d8
You still go rook b8 anyway, though.
and then just rook d8 and
And then you're going to take on d8, play rook b8 again, pinning the
right, exactly.
f6 was suggested. Yeah, f6, but yeah, maybe that survives.
Yeah, f6 would be forced. That's a good point. Um, and then what?
Well, actually, the king could be quite safe on those light squares since white doesn't have a knight or a light squared bishop. But still, that bishop on f8 would be a big problem, just stuck forever.
Yeah, that's a good point. But that's interesting. He swapped the rooks right away rather than
Yeah.
bring in the other rook. Um,
I'm wondering what he's going to do after rook takes, and then queen to d8. If he's going to take the pawn or has some other move up his sleeves.
he's definitely going to avoid the trade of queens. We know that.
Yeah, he can take on a7. He'll be down a pawn, but that a pawn could be a runner. Yeah, maybe chat was right. Maybe that a pawn is just going to become a runner, and with the queen and bishop and maybe a rook supporting it, might be pretty hard to stop.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Yeah.
I mean, it just
Little
seems like a
quieter
fast pawn.
strategy than you don't have to mate them. You just have to uh,
Yeah.
find the
Oh,
ending. Oh,
king
King
d7.
D7.
Well,
That's
I'm
interesting.
really surprised by that move because white gets to keep the checks going with queen takes a7. Now comes with tempo.
Right, and the king is now lost. Well, the king has had to run anyway, but now he's got to go out through E6, which is not very very.
I don't, Black played that move way too quickly. He had plenty of time. 22 minutes on the clock. He could have thought. I think queen d8 had to be played.
Yeah, would seem would
Oh.
seem.
Okay. So this, but I mean, there's no immediate killer blow. Black is technically up a pawn, so I mean, anything can happen here. But I'm not
Yeah,
feeling
but
comfortable
I
about
do
Black's
agree
game.
that a pawn is probably worth the two black pawns all by itself, and then you still have the king position
Jeez.
and the development of the rook and the bishop to try to untangle on the time. Where's the a pawn going to be by the time you develop your pieces? It's
Yeah.
probably going to be around a6 or something.
Queen takes a7. King to d6 probably is not playable because of bishop to c5. Maybe you have to be really careful. You can't play queen takes because then
Right.
d1. There's a lot of tricks that black has to watch out for here.
Yeah.
So maybe he has to go to e6, but e6. I mean, again, you're blocking your e pawn. You can't get your bishop out that easily. Oh boy, I'm not sure what White's thinking about here. He's taking a long time.
Right. All right. Yeah, he's just trying to find the clearest and the path to victory that generates the least counterplay for.
We had a result
We
already.
took with the bishop. That's weird.
There's a result in the game between Rohan and Dennis.
Oh,
Rohan has won his game for CCFC with
wow.
a checkmate in that French defense that we were looking at. That happened very quickly.
Yeah,
I have to go
it
back
looked
a
like
little bit and see what happened.
we went. We were going there, and I don't think we paid much attention to that game because it didn't look like anything much was going to happen.
Right. So
But
White got this attack going with g5, and Black was working on getting the bishop out to b5, and kind of ignored it. And maybe perhaps after g5 on move 22, Black needed to push h5 or do something to actively defend instead of allowing this to get opened up. Even still, g6 might be a move. And then he took on h6, and king h1 was a nice move. That's how you get your rook onto the open file. And how did White get the queen over for this mate? Let's see. Rook c2. So Black was trying to create counterplay on the queen side. Often a good strategy if you have time to do it. And White sacrificed the knight on a2 for this mate threat on h6. And he just Black must have just overlooked the mate and won because he did nothing to try to prevent it. That's an unfortunate way to lose a game.
Hmm.
Even to win, you don't really feel great about winning a game like that when somebody just misses the mate and one.
Right.
Uh, yeah, because certainly black had moves. You know, king h7, queen f8, for example, would have been just defend the pawn. Okay. So we have to update the score. Let me see. What game would you like to go to next? We're jumping around a little bit more randomly this time. Anybody in the chat have a suggestion for a game you'd like to see? Let us know, and we'll go there.
So I just want to take one more look at that Indian Territory game
Sure.
because that's changed somewhat. White did not take with check on a7.
I took with the bishop. Interesting.
Took with the bishop, which seems odd.
Ooh, and a tactic here. Does it work? Let's see. Bishop to a3, attacking the rook on c1, and opening up this discovery to the queen. White has a few options. You might be able to take the rook on h8, but also queen b7 could be possible here.
Queen b7, king e6. King, yeah, d6.
Yeah, I thought
Yeah,
that white needed to take on a7 with check. That just felt like gaining the tempo was so important.
but now I think he's back in the driver's seat again. Um,
Wow, interesting game. Yeah, this one is very topsy-turvy, isn't it?
yeah. Now if king d6, bishop b8, check. Looks like it just costs. Yeah, it looks like it's just going to be big trouble. I think black's in big trouble again.
Oh, yeah, yeah. There's no safe spot for the king. He might have overlooked this queen to b7 move. He might have assumed that white was going to take the rook, and they would trade rooks.
Right. Right.
Okay,
Probably.
we have a request for the Nelson game, so it looks like black's in big trouble here because no matter where you go, if you go king to e6, then rook takes c6, and if king to d6, then bishop to b8. Looks very dangerous. So we're going to switch to Nelson, the top board.
Yep.
Nelson and Arslan. And, in the last game, Arslan was very low on time right out of the opening. This time it's much more level. And what is going on here? This looks a little bit dangerous for White's king.
Yeah, black just won the G pawn, and which kind of and with the open H file, it's hard to see. But white does have the two bishops, which is a theoretical edge, but
Yeah, and White's king may be safer than it looks because the bishop on g2 is an excellent defender in this position. If you play
right.
queen h2, king f1, and you don't have any more checks. Even rook h2 is not a threat here. And without another piece to get involved here, like the bishop on f8 or
Right.
the knight on d7, they can't get in. So,
The bishop was on e7 and the king was on f7, then you'd have rook h1 check here, which would be very strong, but doesn't work right now.
That was an interesting tactic. Yeah, if you could play rook h1 check and king take then queen takes f2 and rook h8 afterwards. Is that your idea?
Right.
Yeah.
The thought. But meanwhile, white is coming in on the white squares, which are very tender for black in this position. That's the source of white counterplay. And so we'll see.
But it looks like Nelson is heading in the direction of what you were thinking. So
Right.
Arslan has to come up with something soon so that he doesn't run into that. Maybe rook e1 and rook e3 if he has time for that. I don't know.
Well, I'm looking at queen f5 in this position.
What's your plan?
Just to be able to come in on e6 looks like a nice square for the queen.
Yeah, I agree. The only thing is I don't like you need
Yeah,
to get another piece in there, right?
right. Yeah, you do need a little help. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
both players have the same issue. I guess if you're
Yeah.
trying to attack, the center is a little bit blocked right now.
Yeah.
White can't really take on e5, I don't think, with the pawn, because then black's knight comes in and will be an attacker, so you don't want to do that. Yeah, it's
Now king
interesting.
f7 is a possibility. Maybe after king f7, queen goes to f5. I'm not sure. Um,
King f7, queen f5, threatening the knight. Yeah, that might buy white the time that he needs. And he's doing this rook e1 plan. I think he wants to go rook e3 and just chase that queen out of there,
oh, okay. Yeah, do that.
and then figure out how to attack.
But if black is prepared to play rook h1, then then he would be okay. So on king f7, what should white play?
Yes, Rohan gave CCFC the lead by winning. Yes, very, very good. He mentioned in the chat.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, we did, by the way, take the lead
Pull ahead.
for the
Yeah.
first time in the match. It was looking grim the first like half hour because we were down 3-0, but we had a miraculous recovery in the end, I would say. And well, we have the lead, but still there are a lot of games going. So we can't rest yet. That's for sure. Let me just get my pairings updated here.
Oh, Nelson played rook to h4.
So does he want to answer rook e3 with rook takes f4 perhaps? No, that doesn't. Does that work? Yeah, maybe. I don't think that
Oh,
works.
yeah.
No, that doesn't work because
No,
the
rook
bishop guards the queen. Yeah.
the queen on e4 is guarded, queen on g3 isn't.
And black's queen is almost trapped after rook e3. Almost trapped.
Well, queen h2 check.
Yeah, queen h2, king f1, but then yeah, I mean maybe it's safe, but it can't really move.
Then rook f4. Yeah, that probably worked.
Yeah, Arslan just has to be careful not to liquidate the position with a lot of trades, because he is down a pawn,
Right.
and black has two extra pawns on the king side, so those pawns could, in the end game, would move down the board and
Yeah.
perhaps be decisive. So he's got to be careful not to just start trading queens and rooks too recklessly in this position. I don't think he's going to.
Right. No, he's
That has to
trying
be the
for an
strategy.
attack on the white squares. I think the question is how to. The problem is he can't get the bishop into play, but um, yeah. So that game has a lot more to be played.
Yeah. For the trivia buffs out there, I know we have some watching. A little trivia for you. This is not the first match between the New Britain Chess Club and the NCCFC. We've played one other match, and I wonder if anybody out there could identify the returning players that played in that match and this match. There are not many, but there are a few. So there you go. Put you guys to work in the chat. If you can, anybody can figure that out. No prize, but it's not easy to find. So guesses are fine as well, of course. But yeah, it's interesting. That match was a long time ago, and we have a lot of new faces and also some returning. So it's fun to see that.
The game board 6 game is still very
Yes.
very much in doubt. The pawns are now equal. There's a pin on the bishop on d6, and
Everything's
bishop,
under attack here.
yeah, bishop c5 is interesting. It just doesn't work because of queen takes c5, rook takes c5, bishop takes c7. So he retreated all the way back. He kind of gave up on any immediate attack.
I'm sorry, what was wrong with bishop to c5? That looked very strong.
Queen takes c5,
And then rook.
rook takes, bishop
Oh,
takes c7.
okay.
The queen would deflect the rook, and then there's no pin, and the
Yeah.
queen on c7 hangs.
Also, of course, the threat was rook takes on a7, so white had to move the bishop, or at least it seems like he had to move the bishop.
Right. Now
And
the question is the a pawn just loose? And can black just be better after rook takes
Well,
a2?
I think you're allowing queen c8 check might be the danger.
Ah, okay.
But if black can somehow be safe from checks in that variation, then rook to a1. Actually, rook to a1 is not really a huge threat because you always have a rook c1 block.
Well, after queen c8 check, rook takes a2, queen c8 check, king e7. Then what?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe queen to b7.
Queen b7 check, king e6, queen c8 check.
I mean, you might
Okay,
have a perpetual check. Yeah.
that could be a way to try to get perpetual.
Oof.
Yeah,
This would not have been a game that I would have predicted to end in a draw. I still don't think it will, but yeah, there is a draw possibility here if the rook takes on a2.
it looks like
White
black
would have
is now
perpetual check.
playing for the win, at least at the moment.
It could be, and the reason for that is, of course, because the queen on d5 is very powerful. It's defending, and it's attacking the rook. It's guarding
Right.
the light squares near white's king. And if you could just get something along the back rank, then that would be very dangerous for white, of course. Um, but yeah,
Seems
this
like
is
might have misplayed his attack a little bit because it looked like he had a lot more than this at one time. When he had when black had none of his pieces in play and white had the opportunity to bring them all in, but instead he traded first and then started to bring in the reserves.
yeah, I definitely agree. But I still feel like this could go any way. There are three results possible in this position.
That's true. Yeah, as long as the game's going, I like black
Yeah, I agree.
better now, but you're right.
Well, he's
It's
thinking here. He's debating whether to take the pawn or not. I don't know what
yeah,
you
he's
do if you
not.
don't take it.
Yeah, you criticized him earlier for moving too quickly, so he might have sensed that somehow.
Yeah, and White used up a lot of time here, trying to find the win. I guess he didn't
Right.
find it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might not have been there. It's hard to. It was a very tricky position the whole way through.
Yeah, it just seemed like if he just continues to build up pressure, I mean, the king did have the escape route, but again, I just thought the plan that guess one of the viewers put in of winning the a pawn
Yes.
and just shoving that thing down the board would have seemed promising, at the very
Let's
least.
check out some games we haven't looked at recently. Let's go to board two between Dan Lowinger and Ted McHugh, leg breaker. And okay, what is going on here? It looks well, it just looks fine, I would say, for both sides. Um, Black obviously has to do something about the knight on g4 that's under attack. But the knight, he can either trade on e3 or maybe go back to f6. And I don't see a problem for either one of those moves. White would be not wanting to capture on g7. That pawn is a trap. There would be rook to g8, trapping the queen. Yeah, so it looks like black is fine here, and yeah, maybe just fine for both players.
Let's see.
We have our in the chat. We have our New Britain Chess Club historian. Bob has I believe answered the question. He has found his write up, I believe, from the match that we played was in 2011 in January. So quite a long time ago.
Uh-huh. 10
And
years ago.
yeah, it was a 12-player match with even longer time controls than this. And that was actually when we were brand new, the Chess Club of Fairfield
Oh,
County.
okay.
You were
Right.
talking earlier about the contrast between the two clubs, how New Britain has been around for how many years did you say?
Over 100, about 120, roughly. We started right about the turn of the century, the previous turn of the century. And I think it was inactive a few times during world wars and things like that. But it's basically in all normal times it's been there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
and for
definitely a storied history.
Yeah, for a while, it was all about Arcagius Strasdans, and he had a vision, and he pursued that, and he was the strongest player, the one running the show, and everything. And a lot of times when you reach that situation, a club will have problems once that person can no longer do all that stuff. But we were blessed with New Britain with a lot of people that were willing and able to step up and fill in, and then try out some new things, try out. So we've got a lot more variety of events now, and when we would have problems with a chess site, we would find another chess site for us to move on to, and now we have a very 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 good one. So those are the two main things. You have a driving force behind a club, and you need a location.
Indeed,
And
yes. By the way, we should look at. I had pulled up the game between Ryan and Derek, and it's another very complicated position. I would say there's definitely some fireworks happening here. If I just go back a couple moves here to just see how this arose. Um, Black snatched a pawn on e5, and the tactic is that if White takes back, then the knight c5 would be get captured. So White tried to chase the queen away. And so White is trying to chase the black queen away from the attack on the knight so that he could, if he could do that, he would win the bishop on e5 for free potentially, or for the pawn. But it looks like black can keep an eye on it. If he just goes queen to b6, I don't see the move. Oh, queen b6 is impossible because of knight d7. Ooh. Ooh. So we might be, are we seeing, black might go down a piece here? There's a little bit of a complication though with knight d4. Knight takes d4 here is would really mix things up quite a bit. Knight takes d4, bishop takes on a5, the queen would be gone, but then black gets white's queen. And at the end of it, black takes on a1, and I'm not even sure what's going on in that position.
so it's pieces for rook and a pawn, and messing up white's other pawns.
Yeah, that would be a very difficult position to evaluate. I'm sure he's considering knight takes d4 here because if you do any
Right.
other move, it looks like any other queen move, like queen c7, you just lose the bishop on e5.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And I don't see another way to try to mix things up here. I think knight d4 has to be what black tries in this position. Wow.
And then and white then has to take queen because black is threatening queen takes c3, queen takes c3, knight e2 check. So
Ooh. Oh yeah.
so that's a very very forcing line. Knight takes d4, bishop takes e5, knight takes f3 check, pawn takes f3, and bishop takes a1, rook takes a1, and he.
Black would have a rook and two pawns, one pawn for the two pieces, the knight and the bishop. But white's pawns are very the structure is very destroyed. Yeah.
2, 4, 6, 7 versus 5. So yeah, 2 pawns. Yeah, I kind of like that for black a little bit. Just in general.
Yeah, it just depends on the main factor there will be can the rooks get involved in the game because actually there's not really an open file in that position for the rooks to invade. So if the rooks can't get active, then the knight and bishop could be much better. But I don't know. Those center pawns for black will start moving down the board.
Yeah, I think just the move pushing the center pawns forward as if the minor pieces can't. The problem for white in that position is there are really not a lot of weaknesses for him to attack. To go to make some progress, but that does seem to be the forced outcome at this point. Now we have a situation where black is again way low on time, in this position, and that can be a problem for Derek
I almost
when
feel
he
like
gets.
he should just do it. You know,
Yeah. Oh, it
just do it.
seems totally forced.
Yeah,
He's yeah, gotta do it. Um, yeah.
yeah. I think the end game is probably going to be unclear, but that's the best option. And
But yeah, it's the only option. It seems totally forced for both sides.
okay, so we have to keep
Uh,
it this game in mind and come back to it. Let's check out another one. Oh, so he is going for it. Here we go.
okay,
And
and
Ryan has seen it. He's responded instantly.
right,
And yeah, they're blitzing out the moves because, as you said, it's all forced.
right,
And we have this endgame on the board, so okay, we didn't have to come back to see it. And I mean, the good thing for white is the bishop on a5 controls the d8 square. Black would love to get a rook behind that pass pawn, but he can't. And also, the knight is blockading on c5. So it's a little bit hard maybe for black to mobilize the pawns down the center, perhaps.
right.
I'd be looking at doing something like rook b8 just to provoke white to play b4 and limit the scope of the bishop on a5 a little bit, just to start. Um, Although you don't have to play b4, I guess the knight is protecting it. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's hard to find a move here for black. What do you
I
think?
think
Rook e8, I guess. Rook e8 or e5, some combination of those moves
yeah,
makes
rook
sense.
e8 looks good, threatening e5, and I don't, or can he just play e5 immediately?
E5 immediately, yeah. Okay, so he goes rook e8. He's going to try to advance in the center. Maybe white can get some counterplay with rook c1 and at some point try to eye that c6 pawn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'll be an interesting game. I was just checked board one.
Sure. Yeah, let's see what's going on board one. And I'll go back a
Still,
couple moves to where we left. White played rook e1, rook h4 happened, king f1 getting out of the way of danger, king f7, and white is invading on the light squares just like you said.
yeah, he's invading on the light squares, and that queen is. This is definitely turned a bit ugly for black because the queen has almost no squares. There's no check anymore.
I think the problem is if you go queen to h2, you're going to run into king f2 and rook h1, trapping it at some point.
Right.
And if you go queen h, so the question is then, what if you go queen to g4 or queen g6? Isn't that just going to be a queen trade? Or am I
Queen
missing something?
g6, queen e6 check can happen. Um,
Yeah,
but
not not sure what's going on.
yeah, I think White has made a little bit of progress here. I think the idea of now h3 has fallen into White's hands, so the white squared bishop can join in the fun here.
Yeah, if that
So
bishop could somehow magically land on e6, then
yeah,
it would be over for black probably. So, but that's not so easy to arrange necessarily with the queen on f5 blocking that.
right. And the
Um,
question,
Sorry, go ahead.
there's I think that's just what, and the time is about equal in this game. So there's no advantage, and it's still a pawn to the good for black. So that's yeah. I think this is still a game that's very much up in the air.
Yeah, very much up in the air. I agree. If white can't find anything, uh, concrete here, then black may well have an advantage. But it's still far away from that. I don't know what's happening here, really, to be honest. I think
So
white might be. Yeah, and the question is, does white trade queens? I'm guessing not. I think you go queen to d3 or queen e4. Yeah, queen d3, and then you have like bishop h3 ideas or rook g3 ideas. And rook g3, to me, seems like a pretty interesting idea because then you have potential to go queen g6 and get some sort of attack going. So black has to be careful in this position.
I was just checking out board number 5, which finally has looked very
Yes.
solid for a long time. But We're finally getting into tactic mode
Yes, let's
there.
just see. There's check, and black is trying to trade queen. So what is so? White's up a pawn. Oh no, black has extra knight. Oh, black has an
Oh,
extra knight sitting there on h6. White has
okay.
some pawns and. Wait a minute. Is there? Can we play queen takes the rook on e8? What's going on? Queen takes the rook. Rook takes with
Yeah, I
check.
think that's
Knight
that's
g8 and
probably the
f2,
move.
right? Or f7. F7 at the end, and that
Yeah,
looks winning.
that's what he just played.
Yeah, this looks winning. Wow. Well, maybe is it winning?
The queen can block.
The queen can't block. Yeah, maybe you can give your queen away, but then you might be down material.
Then you're down the exchange and some pawns. Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think black is doing well here. I haven't found a lot of great games for black this round.
Or last round.
Well, last round you came up with them late in the round. I
Late in
don't
the
see that.
round, yeah, that's
That
true.
hasn't happened so far here. But
But
let's
only one quick result. Last round we had a few quicker results. There's still a lot of games going, and I feel like there's some that
yeah,
we haven't looked at all. Let's look at
yeah. How about
Gabe
Worcester
Borges.
game?
Yeah, I was gonna say. Let's check out this game and what's happening here. At first glance, I like
White
Black's
has
position with the rooks aiming down the board, but it looks like White's ahead by a lot of material.
White has three pawns. Yeah,
Yeah.
and and no bad pieces. So that's normally a good sign
But is
for
there
him.
anything? Is there anything with knight to d3 in this position? Knight d3, and I mean, if I'm
And
black, I'm thinking about stuff like
F4.
rook takes on e4 and then taking on f2, and just trying to get some attack going.
Well, the queen's guarding, and let's see, knight d3, queen d2. So,
Yeah, and then I want to play rook takes e4 maybe.
but the queen's still guarding f. Oh, I see. You got a bunch of guys on
Yeah, then
f2.
I want to play knight takes f2, but it might not be enough because I don't see what the threat is after that.
Right. Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, we have another result
okay.
on the game between that crazy game between Jack Klein and Akul Ramaswamy has ended in a win for Black. So Indian Territory won his game,
Oh, wow.
and
That was a tough win. He toughed that one out.
yeah, he won an exchange somehow, very early. And he never took the pawn on a2. He checked the king. The king ran to g2, and White declined a perpetual, and Black had all these mate threats that looked. No, he didn't have a mate threat. I don't know what's happening here. G4, and now Black has a mate threat on h2.
Yeah, how
Now
did you win
g4
the?
looked like a really big mistake.
Oh, White sacked. Oh,
He had
he
to.
threatened mate on h2, right?
Yeah,
So
he had to sacrifice that. So this g4 move was a big mistake. White made the mistake, I think, in this game of trying to play too hard for a win when he should have
right.
taken the perpetual check. And it looks like,
Well, he didn't. He was never offered a perpetual check,
well,
but I.
it looked like it might
Oh,
have.
maybe you're early on. You're saying very
Earlier,
early,
Black played queen d1 and then queen to d5, and then, but White,
right?
instead of going back, went out to h3.
Yeah.
Um,
But at that point, I don't think he should have taken perpetual because at that point, I think he still had a winning attack at
oh, you mean
that
Black?
particular stage. White at that
Oh,
point.
White. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think he was correct on continuing to play for a win, but I just don't think he did it the right way.
Well, then
Um,
once the queens got traded, the endgame was winning for Black. Okay.
yeah.
So I have to update the score here because now we're back to an even match.
Oh, are
Five,
we?
5-5.
And
So it's a nail
not on
biter.
all the boards.
Nail biter. This is the last round of the match, and there are 6 games going still, and we are tied at 5-5. If the match is tied at the end of all of this, then we go to blitz games. We have a blitz game tiebreaker.
Unfortunately, I think Fairfield has decisive advantages on numerous boards at this time. Uh, Everything but board one, which is still a mess.
Yeah, so which one should we? I feel like there must be one that we haven't looked at recently.
So we have how many games still going on?
6 games going. Have we looked at
Six.
Rohan and Dennis? Rohan and Dennis. Not sure we've checked them out. Let me just find that game.
thought that was finished.
Oh yes, they finished. Okay, yes, that's the finished game. Oh, maybe let's check out Ethan and Suhas. How about that? Let's go back to that
Okay,
game
yeah.
because this one also is firing up a little bit. Oh, let me see the chat. I gotta update this.
Okay.
Sorry, chat. My chat was not updating, so I missed a lot of comments here.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Jack Klein says that he thought he was winning on move 16. Oh, he was winning on move 16. Plus, at some point in that game, White had a 5 point lead.
Hmm.
Uh, this game, White had 5 points earlier.
For this game with Suhas?
No, sorry, the game between Zeus and Indian Territory. But let's
Right,
focus on the
right.
games that are going for now. So yeah,
Yeah, that.
Suhas, where are you?
Yeah.
What's going on here? Rook f5 and e6 looks very interesting. Sack the exchange to get this passed pawn on e6. Yeah, that is interesting. What is going on in that position? And then White has ideas. Well, maybe not even e6. I mean g4.
G4 looks better than E6 in that
Yeah,
position.
g4, and you have ideas of going queen to h7 with a big attack
Yeah,
on the king.
doesn't seem
Interesting.
like on Rook F4. Can you play Rook takes F4 instead of Knight takes?
On f5.
Yeah, yeah. If Rook F5,
Yeah, I
uh,
thought my first instinct was rook takes f5 because you're threatening rook
Rook
takes on
takes.
h5. So
Then
White
on G4, there's Rook F2 check.
rook f2 and king g3.
Yeah, King G3. There's no mate because the king has F8 left over. So the question is whether he can find a decent square. Maybe the rook just no. Problem is that rook doesn't have very any good squares.
No, in that position, chat. Then if rook takes c2, then queen takes on c2, right? I don't see anything after that for black. I mean, yeah, maybe it ends up being a big fancy trade. Um, we had another result. White has won in the game between. Um, let's see, what game is this? Gabe versus Mario. White won that game, so
Right,
it looks like he was up in exchange and a couple extra pawns. Yeah, not much that black can do there. Um,
right.
oh, he avoided mate somehow. What happened here? He did end up with stopping the back rank by sacrificing the queen, but then he was just down the exchange and too many pawns. Yeah. Okay.
The game with Worcester got interesting because
Get there.
Black has sacrificed an exchange and loosening up White's king a little bit. The question is, does he have any? Doesn't seem to have any significant attacking chances against it, though. Um,
Yeah, it doesn't look quite that dangerous
no, no, just
because the second
he
black
needs a
starts
few.
making threats, then white's going to be going rook g6 and all sorts
Yeah,
of threats on black's king.
White's pieces are just way too active in that position for
Way
Black
too
to
active, yes.
have anything. They're both attacking and defending. And that's where the rooks are great as long as they. He's running out of time at this point too. His
Yeah,
clock is
and what do you
winding
do? I
down.
mean, it looks like the knight is trapped, right? Oh, he can go to f4, but
Yeah,
I
he
mean,
can, but then everything gets traded off, and it's just.
oh, you
I
just want
mean,
to simplify. Queen takes and then trade everything, and you have a
yeah, if you
winning.
could, you can give the
Yeah,
exchange back if you want, and you just have a winning rook ending, or
yeah,
it's up to White how he wants to win that game.
yeah.
Um,
That's a good point. You could just simply go to the end game.
right.
Let's see if that's what
Um,
he does before we go to somewhere else. Because if he doesn't, then it could get a little dicey. But
well, I think King H2 is another move that. Um,
well, King
that
h2, Knight takes h3, and then Queen f3.
okay.
So
Yeah,
he has to
that's
be a little careful. Like the natural move here, King h2, could be a blunder. It might be still even okay, but then Queen f3
right.
at the end, and you're attacking the rook and the king, and you pick up the
That's,
rook.
yeah. Is there an in between move though? king h2, knight takes h3, rook on a to f to g6.
Yeah, it could be that you don't have to take the knight on h3, of course.
Something of that. And
Yeah.
then anything comes in on f2, you're just going to take on g7.
Yeah, but you just don't want to go into these complications. You want to
Ooh,
just take it. What did he play? What
he
happened?
pushed the d pawn instead
Wow.
of all of those things.
Wow, so you let the knight take on h3 with check, and the knight's going to get to take on f2 also. This is unnecessary complications.
Yeah, I don't like that last move too much.
Oof, this looks really dangerous. Oh, but queen d5. Queen d5, trade the queens.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And with the queens off the board, then white's king is surely safe.
Yeah.
Okay, he has plenty of time. He doesn't need to rush here. Queen
Although
d5
after
is...
the trade, knight takes f2, hits the rook, rook takes pawn. And is there any discovery with that knight that's worth anything? I don't see it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting line, but I think it's just too much material.
Yeah, instead of queen f3, did he have knight takes f2 in the previous position?
I thought for sure he had to try that.
Yeah, I don't see the rooks under attack. There's this threat on the queen with a discovery.
Yeah, that
Uh,
looks very
that looked like
suspicious.
it looked like he got too fancy here.
Very
Um,
suspicious. Yeah, from white. I think he had the easy. Like, that's something that a lot of players overlook actually. Earlier, he could have simplified just by trading on f4. You give a little bit of
right.
material back so you get an easily winning position. This might be winning for white, but it's so tricky. And he did queen d5, so the queens come off, and now rook
Yeah,
f2. But I think the danger for white is gone.
yeah, danger is over there.
Okay, we got to
But
go
that
to...
was a little bit of a nail biter at the very end because of
Yeah, so white is
because
likely
of
going to win this game. We have to go to Ryan and Derek because
okay.
they're low on time for black. And we have this endgame with the knight and bishop versus rook. Whew. So material is technically even, but I gotta like the knight and bishop. They're coordinating so well here. The bishop can go to d4, and what can black do?
Here we go. Uh, Black's lost traded off a lot of his pawns, gotten a rook off.
Yeah. On the other
Yeah,
hand, white kind of has a fortress, but how do you make progress here? If you're trying to win, I don't see how you do that.
this is a problem for Derek because when he reaches these games and doesn't have any time left to play them.
Yeah, we have a suggestion of knight e6, but yes, knight e6, that's definitely a nice square for the knight, but how do you... You need to defend b3, that's the problem. b3 is a weakness, and if rook b1, then you have to move your knight back to c5 again.
Okay.
So for white, you have to figure out how do you place your pieces optimally. I don't think that that white can be losing this position. I mean, it's tricky, but it shouldn't be losing for white.
No.
Only question is, can white somehow win? And I'm not sure.
Well, I think what he needs to do is set up tactics and try to take advantage of his time advantage. If he can set up a decent sized trap on, he doesn't have to be a forced win.
Actually, I like Hannah Russell's suggestion in the chat. He says, how about a5 for white? a5 and play a6. Like, get your pawn up to a6 so that if the opportunity arises to take on a7, that pawn's already right there, ready to become a queen.
Right.
I like that. That's how you make a little bit of progress, while you have this fortress. Make a little progress with that pawn so that later it could be the decisive factor.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good move.
He hasn't spotted that plan yet. Both kings are a little bit tied down. White's king has to stay, or at least I thought he had to stay close to the f pawn.
Yeah,
And black has to stay close to his f pawn, too. Neither player wants to lose that pawn. And some maneuvering going on here. What about rook h5?
Attacking
rook h5 and take?
a7, bishop takes a7.
Bishop takes a7. So white's
willing to give
yeah.
that pawn to create the strong fast a pawn again.
Yeah, and that A pawn is faster than black's pawn because there's not really a black white's king is well placed to stop the F pawn for black, and there's
Yep.
nothing really in the way of white's pawn. Although the
Yeah.
king is going to make a beeline for over there. But the problem is the bishop does a really good job both supporting that pawn and defending against the F pawn. So I think this bishop is going to be key for white in this position. I just have to see what happens here. Now you could push A7 right away.
I don't think you necessarily want to do that because that
Yeah, yeah, maybe you're right.
allows the king to put some pressure on the A pawn.
And
I think he
Anonymous
just wants.
6266 says white might have to show his knight and bishop mating technique. That would be interesting for sure. We have another
Now
result
he's
that
going to
just came
force it
in.
to get pushed. That makes sense.
Yeah, now he had to push. Yeah, the rook. If the rook could sacrifice for both pawns, then white would have
Yeah,
to prove that endgame. But how does he get the b pawn? I don't know how you
yeah,
do
there's
that.
no way to do that.
Yeah,
There's, um,
yeah. We had another result in the meantime. Gabe Borges did win his game against Bob Rooster. So CCFC is up now 7-5. And how many games do we have remaining? Just 3 games remain. And this one, I don't see black winning it. Wait a minute. Could it be a draw?
yeah, he's stacked here, and he all he has to do now is try to try to get that B pawn off the board, and it'll be a draw. Question is, can white can play knight D3 and hold the B pawn. Black's king will be on B5, and then the F pawn will eventually advance and deflect the king, and then king C4
Right.
would look like
Looks like a draw.
starting to look drawish. Yeah.
Yeah, the F pawn is critical for black in this position, isn't it? If you didn't have that F pawn, then white probably wins.
Oh yeah.
But with the distraction F pawn, one of those pieces, the knight or the king, has to go stop it, and then that gives black time to clean up the B pawn.
Yeah, the king has to come forward right now and go after that B pawn.
We should check the other games. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. There are 4 games still going, so yeah, still a chance for New Britain to make a comeback. I mean, we made a late comeback in the first round,
That's
so
right.
we'll see what happens here. Definitely have to keep an eye on things. Let's go to Lowinger and McHugh. This is a rook and pawn endgame, and it's very interesting because black has a protected pass pawn on e5 that should give him an advantage, but the problem is his h pawn is very weak, so he has to keep that guarded. I think what he wants to, what I was going to say, b3 is a very nice move because what black wants to do is play c4 and king to c5, and white might be stopping this plan with the move b3. Yeah, very interesting endgame here. I think I prefer black actually because he's making progress on the queen side, and I'm not sure that white's making enough progress on the king side to counter it. But a4 might have been a very good move. Ooh, I don't know. These endgames are so tricky.
Oh, double rook. Okay.
Oh, we actually looks like we had 2 more results come in while we were looking at this game before we had a chance to look at them. Yeah, it was the last final seconds. Arslan Achiev has won his game as white against Nelson Castaneda,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
Ethan Gu won his game against Suhas.
Well, that should decide the match right there, I would think.
Yeah, so now that gives CCFC a 9-5 lead. So that does decide the match. Let's keep an eye on these games, and then maybe if we have a little bit of time at the end, we can go back and check out what happened in the end of those games.
Right. This double rook ending is fascinating.
Yeah, there are a lot of weak pawns everywhere, and it's hard to tell what's going to happen. If I had to guess, I would, and it's really a pure guess, I'd have to say draw. Because I think the pawns are just going to start flying off the board.
Right.
Well,
And Yeah, White is trying to make something out of his H pawn at this point.
Right.
He feels that that is only trump card left. Um,
Yes, rook b6 now, or sorry, rook b8. I mean, and
yeah,
h4 maybe, or rook b5, and try to go after these two pawns that are weak. Yeah, yeah. This is what I was thinking. Um, that these pawns are all weak. White's pawns are weak. Black's pawns are weak. They're all just going to get traded, and we might end up with a situation where it's just the F and E pawn for black versus the G and H pawn for white, and it might just be level. But I'm still guessing.
yeah.
Really quickly, you're going to switch to Ryan and Derek because, yeah, as we predicted, that F pawn. Wait a minute, how does he stop this F pawn? Did he let it get away? Black somehow got their F pawn through. Black is going to win this game. Unbelievable.
Oh wow.
Wow. He moved just in time, but it doesn't matter because there's no way to stop this F pawn from coming through. Wow, how
Right.
did this happen? Endgames are so tricky.
Yeah, he got his. He decided he was playing for a win all out. He said that
Unbelievable.
I got to hold that D pawn no matter what, and he got no matter what it.
Wow.
So yeah, that's a good. If it had come a little earlier, it would have been better. But
Wow, I would. I did not think that. I will have to replay it again later because I didn't think that it was going to be possible for
yeah, the king had to go
Black to
all the
win.
way, went all the way over to the queen side to try to hold the p pawn, and he just forgot about that f pawn is a
Yeah,
threat.
yeah. It's easy to miscalculate. Long sequences of knight moves, and
Yeah, that's a rare end game, because that end game was fairly straightforward to, once
so
you balance off the trumps on either side, you
we have
can,
a fascinating rook and pawn endgame on our hands here between these two
yeah, yeah.
players. I still don't know what the result's going to be, but I don't think White can win. I think the problem is this a pawn got very far down the board. White can probably get a draw still if he's careful. Okay, Black wants to put the rook on a5, and that's a very good plan.
Talking about board two.
Yeah, board two is the only game going in the match. Let me just update
Oh,
the
right.
scores.
Yeah. So
New
he,
Britain did win against on board three. Oh, sorry, board four. So pulled back a point here at the end.
this is interesting. The rook's going to blockade the a pawn.
Yeah, and White needs to
Um,
make progress with the G and H pawns, as soon as possible
then
to
he's
create some
going to be
counterplay.
the king will get over. Black's king is going to get over in good time to cut off the white king.
Yeah, but how do you promote your pawn then?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a draw.
Because anytime maybe the black rook can do some checks, but anytime it goes and takes a pawn on the other side of the board, then White snatches the a2 pawn. And if Black's king comes to b2, that gives White time to march the pawns up the board. So yeah, this
But
is looking like a draw.
yeah, white can't really make any progress in this position.
Oh, g4, very nice move actually. Saying take my pawn, I will take
But
you
yeah,
on
now
a2.
all the pawns come off the board.
Yep. There's almost a there was almost like a skewer trick, but not quite. And a draw was offered.
Um,
Oh, it looks like it was declined. Okay, here we go. Yeah, draw for. He didn't see the draw, I'm sure. Okay, so the final game ends in a draw. Which let
that
me
was
just get
it.
the final score up. The final score is 9.5 CCFC to 6.5 New Britain, and do you want to take a look at those two games? We didn't get to see how they finished the board 1 and 3 games. We never saw how
Yeah,
that ended.
definitely.
I'm very curious about the Arslan and Nelson game. Uh, By the way, excellent match. Thank you everybody for playing. Definitely was
Yes.
very exciting games.
And thank you very much for setting this up. I think it was well orchestrated and well run. It's not so easy with all the technology that's involved in this kind of
It is
a
a
match.
it is a bit of a process, but I'm glad that it worked out. It's not easy to coordinate everybody, and let's see if we go back to move. Let's see, where did we leave it? Pretty far back actually. Move 28. I think we saw White retreat the queen, and yes, looking forward to a rematch. Says Anonymous 4185. Indeed. Um, let's see. So queen to g6. Saw White avoiding the queen trade. Okay. And very okay. So there's a very important tactic on move 32. White played f5, sacrificing the pawn to play rook takes g7. Wow, what a tactic that is. Rook takes g7, and the idea is if the king took, then there was a rook g4 check, and you get the queen off the board for black. I believe that's the tactic at least. And let's see.
I've gotten where I can play through the moves, but I'm not seeing any move numbers on the
Oh,
screen.
at some point,
Um,
black sacrificed the rook on d2 for a bishop, but he got the bishop on f3, so he got two bishops for the rook. But
you're way ahead of there. Oh,
yeah,
Rook
I'm,
takes on G7. Okay.
yeah, and then White had this position with the two rooks that they just seem so active. They're controlling so many squares, and what happened here? How did White win this? Because it looks like Black has a fortress with the knight on
Yeah.
f8 and the king on e8. And what happened? This looks. Oh. Oh, there was just. I think there was just a blunder by Black to play rook takes c3. That was on move 41. Rook takes c3 left another rook sacrifice. Rook takes e7, and the queen came into g7, and that was it.
At that point, he had a perpetual for
Well,
the asking.
well, he had rook c1. Oh, he couldn't play rook c1. Okay, so the
Yeah,
rook.
he's still going. He's going for the win at this point.
Right,
Of
he
course.
had the perpetual with queen c1.
Yeah, but he's justified in trying for more.
Oh my goodness.
Uh,
Wow. Yeah, but then he, maybe in time pressure, it looks like he only had 30 seconds left.
missed the threat of rook takes c7 and queen g takes g7.
Wow.
That was and that wasn't even there while the rook was on c7.
I wonder if he could have pushed, like, I mean, even just done something simple like pawn e4 even perhaps, start to make that
I
pawn
think there was a
dangerous.
threat in this position though. He's also threatening rook takes f8 before the rook takes on c3.
Yeah, that could be. Rook
F8,
takes f8, and if you take with the bishop, then I have rook takes on c7. And if you take
right,
with the king, then rook g8, and that's mating. Yeah,
and mating.
yeah.
So there was definitely maybe black would have been best just to take the draw in this position. White can't afford to trade queens,
Yeah, the computer, I just
and
turned on
yet
the computer evaluation for a brief moment, and it says it's 0.78 in Black's favor. So,
oh, it does have something in black's favor, so it's
yeah.
not
But
claiming black should take a draw. How should black proceed here?
let me see. The best move it gave was um, Queen C1 check, and then Queen F4, and then King D8. Keep running the king, apparently.
Just run the
And you
king
give up the.
over.
Apparently, you sacrifice the knight and bishop for the rook.
You're giving back the knight and
You
bishop,
you get back
and
some
one
material, but you get your king to safety on the queen side.
wind
You
up
go
a
king
pawn
D8.
ahead, almost a pawn.
Wow, that's not easy to figure out at all.
No, that's a hard thing.
Okay, very very quickly, maybe we'll change to the Suhas game with Ethan, and There was a lot of moves, but it looked like a pretty even queen and knight endgame, I guess, even. But the problem for black is that the king is a little bit more exposed. So, a couple checks. And, interesting. A queen trade happened, so we had this knight endgame with symmetrical pawn structures. And how did white win this? Maybe black's king went a little bit too far. Turned it into a race when maybe... Yeah, see, that's the thing. When you get down in the match and players start playing too hard for a win,
I
you
don't
can
know.
over push when you shouldn't.
I'm not even sure people had a sense of where the match was.
Yeah, that's true. But you might feel like, oh, I gotta... I mean,
I don't think
that may be true.
it was hard enough for us to keep the score of the match in our minds. I think if we're focused on a game, we're just focused on the game. I still have a hard time calling these games up at will. I get them up and then they disappear, and then I have to try to get them up again.
I think that we're going to call it a day here. Thanks again for everybody who tuned in to watch. That was a lot of fun. Thanks a lot, Rick, for doing the commentary. That was really good to hear your insights into the players and the games.
Match, and we peaked a little early, about halfway through the first round. New Britain was. I think we were a little bit too. Maybe we got a little overconfident at that point, but
you had me nervous, you guys.
we came out and were on fire in the first. The first quarter went our way. After that, it was all downhill, I think.
Yeah. Okay, before we go, I just want to let everybody know about some of our upcoming events. We'll have a tournament this coming Saturday, another one of our Swiss events, which we did last week, which was a cash prize tournament. It was a lot of fun. For those under 2,000, we'd love to have you join us for that. That'll be this coming Saturday. And then our next broadcast event will be our main event series. Will return this coming Sunday, this time between experts Brian Weiss and Jack Grills. That'll be on Sunday at 3 o'clock, same start time as this event. And of course, anybody is welcome to join us for our regular Blitz events that we're having on Wednesdays at 7 o'clock on chess.com. And anyway, great match. Thanks again, Rick. Thanks to all the players. And we'll see you next time. Any final thoughts?
All right, very good. Yeah, let's not wait another 10 years.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.